In this lecture series, we will start with Biotechnology and Medicine subsection. So the first topic under this subsection is genetically modified organisms. So what are genetically modified organisms? Genetically modified organisms are the organisms in which genetic material has been altered in a way that does not occur in natural recombination. So what do we understand by this? We will first look at what is genetic material and how it happens, the natural recombination happens. All the organisms, all the species will have certain genetic material inside them. So when the parent or the parent organism reproduces, it will give rise to offsprings. So this genetic material will recombine when it is undergoing reproduction to have a new combination of the genetic material. So this is natural recombination. We will see how this happens in nature. For example, we have two plants here. This plant is tall and this plant has a sweet fruit, a sweeter fruit. So when the pollen grain from this plant gets onto the flower in this plant and it produces a seed, the seed is natural recombination. This process of reproduction is natural. So the seed that comes from this can give rise to a plant that is both tall as well as that has a sweeter fruit. So this is a natural recombination that occurs in nature. The genetic material will be having a new combination which is different from both the parent plants. So this is how it happens in nature. But in genetically modified organisms, we alter the same genetic material but in an artificial way. That means it is altered in a way that does not occur in natural recombination. So how do we do this? We will take the same example of these two plants. We have a taller plant and a plant with a sweeter fruit. So what we can do is take the seed from this plant. So this plant, this genetic material has already a gene that will give rise to a taller plant. So a gene is there for tallness. Next, we will take this plant and from this plant we will separate that gene which is giving rise to that sweeter fruit. We will take this gene and we will introduce in this seed artificially in a lab. So now this seed becomes a genetically modified organism. The plant that it will give rise to is a genetically modified organism. So why do we do this? We do this to get favorable characteristics. For example, in this two plants we have seen this natural reproduction or natural recombination. There is very low probability that it might occur in nature. It will only occur in 1 in millions. So, and it is very difficult to get such a crop naturally. So to get the favorable characteristics in one single plant or one single variety, we will do this artificially, where we will alter the genetic material by putting new genes or taking off some genes from the genetic material. So this is why we do genetically modified organisms. So how it is done? Crops are modified to produce favorable characteristics such as pesticide tolerance, herbicide tolerance, etc. So we will take an example. There is a field where crops are grown. We have a certain weed that is coming up between the crops. So this will decrease the yield of our crop. What we'll do is use a herbicide. This herbicide will kill this weed. But at the same time, this herbicide may also damage our crops. That is not favorable for us. So what we can do is take this plant in this seed we will add one more gene which gives resistance to this herbicide. So if we put this gene in the genetic material of this seed and grow this plant, what will happen is this herbicide will only kill the weed but not the crop. So that is favorable for the farmer. Such characteristics can be introduced in crops such as pesticide tolerance, herbicide tolerance, even drought resistance. That means those plants or those seeds can grow even in drought prone areas with less water. So that is a favorable characteristic for the farmer. Next comes the concerns that genetically modified organisms carry. So we have seen that genetically modified organisms, we can include all the favorable characteristics in the crop. So what is the concern with genetically modified organisms? There are certain challenges that these genetically modified organisms carry along with them, which includes biological, ecological, and socio-economic. What are the biological concerns? For example, we have altered the genetic material of a crop. The fruit that it gets might be toxic to human beings. We do not know it yet. So there is a challenge or there is a concern that this might happen. So there might be toxicity, or maybe this genetically modified crop may be toxic to the soil and the organisms that are living in the soil. That is a concern. Next comes ecological concerns. So here in genetically modified organisms, we are artificially introducing different genes. For example, we have introduced a gene for drought resistance in a plant. So this plant naturally does not grow in a particular area. We have given it a gene so that it grows in that drought prone area. What happens is that, what if this becomes an invasive species? Because it naturally does not belong to that area, the other organisms or the other plants are not accustomed to this plant growth. So that becomes a concern. So we might inadvertently introduce invasive alien species. Invasive alien species. So this is also a concern when it comes to ecology. Next comes socio-economic concerns. Particularly for GMO crops, the costs might be very higher. Farmers cannot afford the cost of those crops or the seeds to sow those crops. That is a socio-economic concern. For example, if a seed company has made a genetically modified crop and has given it to the farmers, but if there is a catch that the plants cannot be grown from the seeds, normally farmers will save some of the grain to be sown the next season. That means they will have the same crop that will give them seeds for the next season. But what if the seed company that has invented this new crop variety has made sure that these seeds won't work the next season? So that becomes a burden on the farmer to buy seeds every season from the same company. So that is a socio-economic concern. So though we have certain favorable traits with genetically modified organisms, there are challenges as well. So this brings us to the reason why it is important to regulate GMOs in India. So why GMOs is recently in news for the prelims examination this year, it is important because India has allowed import of genetically modified soya bean for livestock feed. So what is very special about this particular news item? We have seen that genetically modified crops have certain favorable characteristics. So what is it so special? What is so special is that there is only one crop that is allowed in India that is genetically modified. It is BT cotton. This is the only genetically modified crop that has been approved for commercial cultivation in 2002 in India. So this is the importance of India allowing genetically modified soybean for livestock feed. So here if we see cotton is not a food crop, it is a cash crop. So cotton we do not eat. So it might not cause health concerns for human beings. So that is why BT cotton was given approval after the field trials. None other than BT cotton is given approval. For example, we have genetically modified mustard that was developed by Delhi University. So it was indigenously developed, but it is still not given approval for commercial cultivation because this needs more field trials and there should be enough data to ensure safety of the human beings. So if we see how important this GM soybean being allowed to be imported into India. So only one crop, that too cash crop, is allowed in India for commercial cultivation. GM mustard is not yet given approval because it might affect human health. So this part in current affairs becomes very important for prelims examination. We need to remember it is GM soybean, genetically modified soybean, and it is only for livestock feed. That means this imported genetically modified soybean cannot be used for human consumption but only can be used as livestock feed. Livestock feed means it can be used to feed the poultry or cows that so that can be used. That is one of the application for genetically modified soybean. Next comes, if these are the rules and this is how tightly it is being regulated, the genetically modified organisms in India, so we have to see what are the bodies that regulate this genetically modified organisms and what are the laws that are made by the government of India. So here we see the Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. This is the body that approves field trials of any genetically modified crops. So what is this GEAC? This is a statutory body. This is a statutory body. It is very important that this is a statutory body. That is, it is made under a law made by the government of India. We will see what is the law that gave rise to Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. The law is Environment Protection Act 1986. So there are certain rules made under this Environment Protection Act 1986, that is rules for the manufacture, use, import, export and storage of hazardous microorganisms, genetically engineering organisms or cells. So these rules are made under this act, and under these rules this committee has come into existence. So this is a statutory body made under this act. These 2 points are important for prelims examination. Next comes MOEFCC and the Department of Biotechnology. So MOEFCC is Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change and Department of Biotechnology. These are responsible for implementation of the regulations. So regulations will be made under this act. GEAC will approve any field trials or even commercial field trials will be approved by GEAC. That means if, for example, GM mustard was invented in India by Delhi Institute, but we have to gather data whether it is safe for the soil, whether it is safe for human health, whether it is safe for the ecology. So such information will be collected by having trials. We will grow the crop in certain limited area under supervision so that we can get the data about how safe it is or how useful it is. That is field trial. So such field trials will be approved by GEAC. So we have already seen that BT cotton is the only genetically modified crop that has been approved. This is important for prelims examination. Only one crop for commercial cultivation, that is BT cotton. Next comes GM mustard. We have to remember GM mustard is DMH11, the name of this variety. It was developed by Delhi University. So we saw what is a field trial. So here GM mustard is pending for commercial release. So it is still in the trial phase. It has not been approved for commercial cultivation because GEAC has advised to generate complete safety assessment data on environmental biosafety. Like we have discussed, we still have to get more data so that we can make sure GM mustard is safe for ecology as well as human health. So GM mustard is not there for commercial cultivation yet. Next, GEAC has allowed biosafety research field trials of 2 new transgenic varieties of indigenously developed BT brinjal. So BT brinjal is also another food crop that was genetically modified, but here also we see that GEAC, the Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee, has asked for research and field trials of 2 varieties of BT brinjal. So for prelims, we need to remember BT brinjal is still for field trials and it is not there for commercial cultivation, and it is developed by National Institute for Plant Biotechnology and Indian Council of Agriculture Research. So these 2 bodies combined to develop this BT brinjal variety. So for prelims perspective, first thing is BT cotton, only commercial crop, only under commercial cultivation. GM mustard and BT brinjal are not yet under commercial cultivation. These are the points that we need to remember for prelims perspective. So we have seen that genetically modified organisms are very tightly regulated and only one of the crop is available for commercial cultivation. But if we see USA, Brazil, Argentina, India and Canada together account for approximately 90% area of GM cultivation. So this is a very important statement because in prelims there will be one statement where they will say India is a major cultivator of GM crops. So we have seen that the regulation is very tight for GM crops. So we might think that India is not a very major cultivator of GM crops, but that is false. Here we see India is one of the countries where majorly GM crops are cultivated. Even though we have only BT cotton that is approved, India is one of the major cultivators of genetically modified crops. That means BT cotton is widely cultivated. So this is an important statement for prelims examination. If we see individually, this might sound false, but it is important that we see that it is true in the examination. So under biotechnology and medicine, in this lecture series, we will next look at genomic sequencing and human genome project, which is also there in the news recently. And then we will look at fortified foods. So this is also a very hot topic in current affairs this year. Next we will see biofuels. Biofuels is also a hot topic, particularly with the rise in renewables, focus on renewable sources. Next comes DNA technology bill. This bill was recently passed and so it becomes a very hot topic for prelims examination. These are the topics we will further look at in the lecture series. For now, thank you so much.